Abraham, it's an honor being here. I made my trip from Colombia, South America, to see you. First time. My new desire is one of these days you can go to Colombia. It's changing, a lot of changing right now. First time I saw you, that was in 2007 through the Secret. And then the first time I saw your face, I saw Esther, I say, there is something going on with this lady. And I started reading your books in Spanish and reading, watching online the videos. And now I'm here. After 5 years, my desire come true. And then I'm excited of being here. And I knew you were going to watch me. I knew it. And thanks for this opportunity. My question is, since I was a child, I know the feeling that I have my inner being guiding me in everything. For example, when I was in immigration, there was a long line to wait. And my inner being say, go to the line 17. It's going to be faster than the 16. I say, okay, Julian, you having... and then I didn't listen. And guess what? Line 17 went faster than the 16 and I was. And then I had to take a plane from Fort Lauderdale to Atlanta. And then my mother-in-law say, I'm going to drive you to the airport. And then she was driving so slow. And my inner beings keep saying, you're not going to lose your plane. Just make sure you're going to take it. And I wanted to believe it. And then they stopped the plane, everything happened, and finally I got in Atlanta, Georgia. So sometimes I get confused. Sometimes when my inner being says, do this or do this, I want to make sure it's my inner being and not my doubt, because it told me, go and play the lottery. And I say, okay. And then and I obey a week after. He told me that. So I want to make sure when it's my inner being calling me and not Julian as a human or as a person. And I want to see that difference.
Perfectly presented question. So we talked about realizing something, or we talked about being in a place where you receive the revelation of it. And we've talked about how you've put all that you want into your vortex, and that it has been spinning. We should put your vortex up here, that it has been spinning, and that the cooperative components have all been gathered. And the question is, are you a cooperative component? So if you're in the vicinity of that high-flying source energy, source involved vortex, if you're in the vicinity of that and you get an impulse and you follow it, the impulse is always the right one. But let's talk about the other grid discs, the other points of attraction. In other words, if you're spinning here and you get an impulse to do something, and the impulse comes sort of out of nowhere, so that your assumption is, oh, my inner being is telling me this, when all that's happened is that you've gathered momentum that has influenced you to an action. And it feels like sometimes people will say, the devil made me do it. And of course, they're playing when they say that. But there are people who really believe that they are being encouraged from a negative place because they didn't believe that they would do that. And we say, where you are, the disc that you choose and the momentum that you get going is what equals that faster and faster momentum and that impulse to act. There are a lot of impulses that come that are not inspired from pure positive energy, but they're inspired from something. So what is it? What are they inspired from? They're inspired from the momentum of law of attraction. You see, every thought that man has ever thought still exists. And those thoughts are being managed by law of attraction. So there are rivers and streams of them. So when you get hold of a thought and you beat the drum of it for a little while, so you get some momentum going, you can be swept up into that. And it feels like it's something bigger than you that is calling you, because it is something bigger than you. That's why the man talking to Esther is so certain that there is a Satan. There certainly must be something that will offer me bad information. And we say, of course, there are rivers and streams of that. You get to choose what vibrational disc you are on. And when you've practiced that disc of alignment, where your vortex is being tended by the higher part of you, then that's the inspiration that comes. Esther always says, has from the very beginning, Abraham, I'm wanting to speak clearly your words. And what she means by that is, I want to be in the vibrational place that your impulses and your message and your meaning will be so clear to me that I will find the words that express it, you see. And so sometimes, like in wanting to win the lottery, sometimes that intention is not coming from your vibrational place of prosperity. Sometimes that desire to win the lottery is coming from your place of not having enough. So you're not on the disc. You're not on the disc that is in alignment with all that you are, but still the impulse comes, you see. So it's a matter of just practicing. And the way you practice is by thinking and feeling on purpose, and then by watching what manifests. We haven't talked about this today, but let's do it. You come from non-physical, and non-physical still remains non-physical. So you always have that relationship with non-physical, and that's what your emotions are. So when you have an impulse to do something, if you are keenly aware of the way it feels, you can really feel if you're resonant with source. And you know the difference. We know you do. You know the difference between being resonant with source and feeling something and just feeling something. You know the difference.
Yes.
Yeah.
I know the difference.
Yeah.
All right.
So you might say, all right, inner being, I know you're there. All right, Abraham, I know you're there. I know you're there, and I know you're available to me. And I also know that it's up to me to choose a high frequency disc in order for our communication to be steady and constant. And so I'm practicing myself there all the time. Esther laughs every now and again, not laughs so much as complains, but it is laughable. It's just annoying to her when she knows that she has access to this, that she would choose anything less than this. Why would I ever choose anything less than this? And friends, well-meaning friends, will say, well, you're human. And Esther will say, well, that stinks, doesn't it? In other words, I don't have to be so human. I don't have to choose those lower discs. I know better. And we say, how do you know you're on a high-flying disc if you're not occasionally on a low-flying disc? How do you know who you really are if you don't occasionally pinch yourself off from who you really are? And how do you keep your wanting to be who you really are sharp if you're not occasionally not who you really are? In other words, you see what we're getting at? The source never gives up on you, so you don't need to worry about getting so out of sync that you'll lose your connection. You can't do that. You'll never lose your connection. It's an eternal connection. So just play with it until you find your bearing. The wire walker is not out there on that wire just holding steady. He'd fall in Niagara Falls immediately if that's what he is doing. He's moving, he's flexing, he's moving with the wind, he's compensating for what's going on around him. He's finding his balance constantly, and sometimes it's so subtle you can't see it, and sometimes it's not so subtle and you can see it, but he's always seeking balance, and that's what you're doing too. Always seeking the balance of alignment and not being hard on yourself if you occasionally aren't right on it.
Okay. Oh, thank you very much. I appreciate this time.
Really good. We do as well.